My wife said, "Whatever, I don't need you. I have plenty of options," after I caught her flirting with other guys at a party. I said, "Perfect, use them for rent too." When she came back from her options at 3 a.m., her stuff was packed and the locks were changed. Look, when I married Brooke. Yeah, that Brooke, the one with the Instagram perfect smile and the laugh that could make you forget she just insulted your mother. I genuinely thought I'd won the lottery. Not the scratch-off kind you buy at a gas station while contemplating your life choices, but the actual jackpot. The kind where you see fireworks, hear angels singing, and convince yourself that, yeah, this is it. This is the person I'm going to grow old and wrinkly with while arguing about whose turn it is to take out the trash. She was smart, like scary smart when she wanted to be, funny in that way that made you snort laugh even when you were trying to stay mad at her, and supposedly cute when angry. That's what everyone said. Her friends, my friends, even her mom dropped that line at the wedding like it was some kind of blessing. Oh, she's just so cute when she's angry. They'd coo. Like she was a tiny Pomeranian barking at a mailman instead of a grown woman who could verbally dismantle your entire existence before her morning coffee. Spoiler alert, because I'm nice like that, and I'll save you the suspense. She wasn't cute when angry. Not even close. She was more like a rabid raccoon wearing mascara and fake eyelashes, the kind that gets into your garbage at 2 in the morning and somehow makes you feel like the villain for trying to shoo it away with a broom. But I'm getting ahead of myself here, because for a while, almost 2 years, to be exact, I genuinely believed we had it good. Life seemed smooth, you know? Like one of those commercials for allergy medication where everyone's frolicking in a field of wildflowers without a single sneeze. We had the nice house in the suburbs, the kind with a 2-car garage and a lawn that I actually had to mow every weekend because apparently that's what homeownership means, eternal servitude to grass. I had a solid job as a project manager, the kind where you wear business casual, attend meetings that could have been emails, and nod seriously while someone presents a PowerPoint about synergy and leveraging core competencies. We had 2 cars in the driveway, his and hers, like we were starring in our own personal American dream commercial. From the outside looking in, we were perfect. The kind of couple that makes other people go, ah, and feel slightly inadequate about their own relationships. But here's the thing about perfect illusions. They only work if you don't look too closely, and I'd been avoiding looking closely for longer than I care to admit. Because if I'm being honest, really honest with myself, I should have noticed the warning signs way earlier. Like, billboard-sized, neon flashing, impossible to ignore warning signs. Brooke treated our place like it was a hotel, and not even a nice hotel. More like one of those budget ones where they charge you extra for Wi-Fi, and the continental breakfast is stale muffins and questionable coffee. She never chipped in for bills, not the electric, not the water, not even the internet that she used for approximately 16 hours a day scrolling through TikTok and watching reality TV shows about rich people being terrible to each other. Groceries? Those magically stocked themselves, by which I mean I was the one doing the shopping every Saturday morning while she slept in until noon. The fridge would be full of her favorite yogurt, the fancy organic kind that costs like $8 for a tiny container, her special almond milk, those ridiculously expensive protein bars she claimed she needed for her wellness journey, and all the ingredients for whatever Pinterest recipe she'd decided she absolutely had to make, but would inevitably forget about 3 days later. The laundry situation was even better. Clean clothes apparently materialized in her closet through some kind of domestic sorcery, which is a fancy way of saying I was doing all of it. Washing, drying, folding, hanging up her delicate items that required special care because God forbid a $30 tank top from some boutique with a French name got ruined in the regular cycle. And did I get a thank you? A simple acknowledgement of my service to the cause of her having clean underwear? Of course not. That would require noticing that someone else was doing something for you. And Brooke was way too busy being Brooke to notice little details like that. But you know what I told myself, like the absolute champion of self-delusion that I was? I told myself that marriage is about patience, that relationships require work, that sometimes you have to be the person who does more because that's what love means. Sacrifice, compromise, being the bigger person even when the other person is acting like they're auditioning for a reality show called World's Most Oblivious Spouse. I'd read all the articles, seen all the advice from people who'd been married for like 40 years, and claimed the secret was never going to bed angry and always communicating openly. So I communicated. I was patient. I was understanding. When she forgot to do something she said she'd do, I'd do it myself and not even bring it up because I didn't want to be that guy, you know? The nagging husband, the one who keeps score, the one who turns every little thing into a federal case. I wanted to be the cool husband, the understanding one, the one who just lets stuff slide because that's what mature adults do in healthy relationships. What I didn't know back then, what I couldn't have possibly predicted even if I'd had a crystal ball and a team of fortune tellers, was that my infinite patience was about to be traded in for something way more satisfying. I'm talking about weapons-grade sarcasm, the kind that could cut through steel. Petty revenge, so creative it could win awards. And the most deeply, profoundly satisfying box-packing spree of my entire life. The kind of organizational project that would make Marie Kondo weep with joy. But I'm getting ahead of myself again. At this point in the story, I was still living in the perfect illusion, still convinced that if I just tried hard enough, communicated better, loved harder, that everything would work out. I was still the guy who came home from work and asked, "How was your day?" Even though the answer was always either fine or a 20-minute monologue about some drama with her friends that I couldn't follow because it involved like 17 people I'd never met and a complicated betrayal involving someone's birthday party and a group chat. I was still making dinner most nights, still pretending not to notice that she'd leave her dishes on the counter 2 feet away from the dishwasher, still telling myself that this was normal, that all marriages had their quirks, that I was lucky to have someone as beautiful and fun as Brooke in my life. The thing is, when you're living inside an illusion, you don't realize it's an illusion. You think it's just reality with a few rough edges, normal stuff that every couple deals with. You make excuses. You rationalize. You tell yourself stories about how things will get better, how once she gets that promotion she's been talking about, or once we take that vacation we've been planning, or once we finally get around to having that serious conversation about our future, everything will click into place, and we'll be that perfect couple everyone thinks we already are. You don't see that you're the only one trying, the only one compromising, the only one actually invested in making the relationship work. You're too close to it, too deep in it, too committed to the story you've told yourself about what your marriage is supposed to be. But every illusion has an expiration date, and mine was coming up fast. I just didn't know it yet. The big breaking point, the moment where the perfect illusion didn't just crack, but absolutely shattered into a million tiny pieces like a windshield meeting a brick at 70 miles per hour, came at our friend Oliver's birthday party. Now, Oliver's parties were legendary in our circle. The kind of events where you knew you'd either have the best night of your month or wake up the next morning wondering why you thought Jaeger bombs were a good idea after 30. This particular Saturday night, his place was absolutely packed, and I'm talking wall-to-wall people, the kind of crowded where you have to turn sideways to get through the hallway and you're constantly apologizing for bumping into strangers. Music was blasting so loud you could feel the bass in your chest, some mix of throwback hip-hop and current pop, that had everyone nodding along whether they wanted to or not. Drinks were flowing like someone had opened a dam of alcohol, red Solo cups everywhere, a kitchen counter that had been transformed into a makeshift bar with more bottles than a liquor store, and someone had even set up a legit cocktail station with a shaker and everything, though I'm pretty sure the guy manning it was just making everything up as he went along. Everyone was dancing, or at least doing that thing where you sway and bob your head and pretend you've got rhythm even though you absolutely don't. The living room had been cleared out and turned into a dance floor, and there were probably 40 people packed in there, doing everything from actual coordinated moves to what can only be described as enthusiastic flailing. The energy was good, you know? That kind of party vibe where everyone's happy, loosened up, having a genuinely great time without any drama or weirdness. At least, that's what it was supposed to be. I was actually enjoying myself for the first solid hour, catching up with buddies I hadn't seen in a while, doing that guy thing where you clasp hands and pull each other into a half hug while slapping backs and saying things like, "Bro, it's been too long, and we gotta grab beers soon." I'd had maybe 2 drinks, just enough to feel relaxed but not enough to do anything stupid, and I was in that perfect sweet spot of party contentment. Brooke, on the other hand, instead of, dancing with her husband, the guy she supposedly loved and chose to spend her life with, the one who brought her to this party in the first place, was across the room. And I don't mean just physically across the room. I mean she might as well have been on another planet for how much attention she was paying to me. She was laughing, but not her normal laugh. This was that loud, performative laugh, the kind that's meant to be heard from a distance, the kind that says, "Look at me. Look at how much fun I'm having. Look at how hilarious this person is." She was practically doubled over at some guy's jokes about his gym gains, and I use the term jokes very loosely here, because from what I could catch as I made my way over, this dude was literally just describing his workout routine and saying bro every third word. Yeah, so I hit chest and tris, bro. Then I went back and did some extra sets, bro, because you gotta confuse the muscles, bro. Absolutely hilarious stuff, right? Comedy gold. Someone should give this guy a Netflix special. But wait, it gets better. Because Jim Bro wasn't the only one in Brooke's little fan club. Another dude, this one wearing a button-up shirt that was unbuttoned just one button too many, showing off his chest hair like he was auditioning for a cologne commercial from the 80s, had somehow positioned himself right next to her. And his hand, oh his hand, had found its way to the small of her back, then started sliding down, casual as you please, getting a little too close to territory that should definitely be off-limits when you're talking to someone else's wife at a party. She didn't move away, didn't step back, didn't do that thing where you politely create distance while keeping the conversation going. Nope, she just kept laughing, kept sipping her wine, kept acting like this was all perfectly normal and appropriate behavior for a married woman at a party with her husband literally 20 feet away. I watched this for maybe 30 seconds, which is 30 seconds too long when you think about it. But I guess I was giving her the benefit of the doubt, waiting for her to notice me walking over, waiting for her to step away, waiting for literally any sign that she remembered she had a husband. When none of that happened, I walked right up to their little triangle of flirtation with what I thought was a pretty friendly smile plastered on my face, the kind of smile that says, "Hey guys, what's going on here?" but also maybe says, "I'm 2 seconds away from losing it." I looked at Brooke, then at Jim Bro, then at chest hair cologne model, and said, keeping my voice light and casual, "Everything good here? Or are we auditioning candidates for your new husband? Because if we are, I should probably see some resumes first, check some references, maybe run a credit report." The two guys looked at me like I'd just appeared out of thin air, like they genuinely hadn't noticed there was a husband in the picture, which honestly wouldn't surprise me because Brooke had a way of conveniently forgetting to mention that little detail when it suited her. Jim Bro mumbled something about getting another drink and disappeared into the crowd faster than a shoplifter who just heard sirens. Chest hair guy at least had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable before also making his exit, probably to go find someone else's wife to inappropriately touch. But Brooke? Brooke just rolled her eyes at me. Actually rolled her entire eyes like I was the one being ridiculous, like I was the one causing a scene by having the audacity to approach my own wife at a party. She took a long, deliberate sip of her wine, the kind of sip that's meant to show you just how unbothered she is, how completely unimpressed she is with your presence, and then she said it. The words that would echo in my head for weeks, the words that would become the catalyst for everything that followed. The legendary words that would justify every single petty decision I was about to make. She looked me dead in the eyes and muttered, "Whatever. I don't need you. I have plenty of options." Options. She said options. Like she was standing in the cereal aisle at the grocery store, contemplating whether to go with Frosted Flakes or Cheerios. Like she was at an all-you-can-eat buffet, pointing at men the way people point at shrimp cocktails and egg rolls, deciding which one looked most appetizing and which one she wanted to pile on her plate. Not, "I'm upset with you right now." Not, "We need to talk about this later." Not even, "You're embarrassing me." Nope. Just straight up, "I have plenty of options," delivered with the kind of casual confidence that suggested she'd been thinking about these so-called options for a while, maybe had even mentally cataloged them, given them rankings, made a spreadsheet for all I knew. That's when something in my brain just flipped, like a light switch going from off to on. Except instead of light, it was pure, concentrated sarcasm mixed with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. All the excuses I'd been making, all the patience I'd been practicing, all the "marriage is hard work" mantras I'd been repeating to myself, all of it just evaporated in that moment. I looked at her standing there with her wine glass and her attitude and her options, and instead of getting angry, instead of making a scene, Instead of doing what she probably expected me to do, I smiled. Not a fake smile, not a forced smile, but a genuine smile that came from somewhere deep in my soul, the kind of smile that probably should have scared her if she'd been paying attention. I smiled at her and said, keeping my voice perfectly calm and pleasant, "Perfect. That's just perfect, Brooke. Then you can use those options for rent too. You know, since you've got so many of them lined up. Maybe they'd like to help with the electric bill? Or groceries. I hear options are really good at splitting household expenses." The look on her face right then, in that exact moment, was something I will treasure for the rest of my life. It was like someone had just told her that Starbucks had permanently discontinued pumpkin spice lattes, or that Instagram was shutting down, or that fast fashion was suddenly illegal. Her mouth opened slightly, her eyes went wide, and you could literally see the wheels turning in her head as she tried to process whether I was joking, whether I was serious, whether I'd actually just said what she thought I said. For once in our entire relationship, Brooke was speechless. The woman who always had a comeback, always had the last word, always had something to say, was just standing there like a computer that had encountered an error message it didn't know how to handle. And me? I just stood there smiling, feeling lighter than I had in years. That night, instead of coming home with me like a normal married person would after having a massive reality check delivered to them at a party, Brooke did exactly what I expected her to do, which was also exactly what she shouldn't have done if she had even a single functioning brain cell dedicated to self-preservation. She strutted out of that party with her options, plural, because apparently one wasn't enough for her grand exit. I watched her leave with Jim Bro and chest hair guy flanking her like she was some kind of celebrity being escorted by bodyguards, except way less impressive and way more desperate. She didn't even look back, just walked out that door with her head held high, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor, probably thinking she was having some kind of boss moment, like she'd really shown me who was in charge. She wanted to prove a point, wanted to demonstrate that she really did have options, that she wasn't just talking trash, that I should be worried about losing her. Fine. Have fun, sweetheart. Enjoy your options. I hope they're everything you dreamed they'd be and more. Meanwhile, I stayed at the party for exactly 12 more minutes, just long enough to finish my drink, say goodbye to Oliver, and wish him a happy birthday one more time, and assure the handful of people who'd witnessed the drama that everything was totally fine and not to worry about it. The looks I got ranged from sympathy to confusion to that slightly excited expression people get when they know they're going to have some grade A gossip to share later. I kept it cool, kept smiling, kept acting like my wife ditching me at a party to leave with two random dudes was just a normal Saturday night occurrence. Nothing to see here, folks. Then I drove myself home, taking the long way because I needed the extra 15 minutes to think, to plan, to really cement in my mind what I was about to do. I pulled into our driveway around midnight, parked in my usual spot, and walked into our house that suddenly felt a whole lot more like my house than our house. I made myself a sandwich, because spite tastes better on a full stomach, and I'm talking a proper sandwich here, not some sad 2 slices of bread and lunch meat situation. I'm talking turkey, ham, provolone cheese, lettuce, tomatoes, pickles, a little bit of mayo, a little bit of mustard, the works. I even toasted the bread. If I was going to orchestrate the most satisfying revenge of my life, I was going to do it properly fueled. I ate that sandwich while standing in the kitchen, looking around at everything that suddenly felt different, like I was seeing it all clearly for the first time. The dishes in the sink that I'd wash tomorrow because I always wash them. The coffee maker I'd prep tonight, so it'd be ready in the morning because I was always the one who made coffee. The bills stacked on the counter that I'd pay because, well, you get the picture. Then I turned on Netflix, threw on some mindless action movie I'd seen 100 times before, and I planned. Oh boy, did I plan. I planned like a general preparing for war, like a chess player thinking 12 moves ahead, like someone who'd finally had enough and was ready to do something about it. I started around 12:30. And let me tell you, there's something deeply therapeutic about packing someone else's stuff. I went through that house like I was on a mission from God, which I basically was, if God cares about petty marital revenge. I grabbed boxes from the garage, the ones we'd never fully unpacked from when we moved in because Brooke kept saying she'd get to it eventually, which was code for, you'll do it, or it'll never happen. I started in the bedroom, carefully, methodically packing every single item that belonged to her. Clothes from the closet, and she had a lot of clothes. I'm talking racks and racks of stuff. half of which still had tags on them because she bought things compulsively and then never wore them. Shoes. Dear God, the shoes. Boxes and boxes of shoes. Heels she couldn't walk in. Sneakers she'd worn once. Boots for every possible weather condition, including apparently monsoon season in a tropical rainforest. I packed her makeup collection from the bathroom, which took 3 boxes by itself because she had more skincare products than a department store, serums and creams and masks and tools I couldn't even identify, all of it costing more than a car payment. I packed her hair straightener, her curling iron, her blow dryer that was so expensive it should have come with a loan application. I packed her ridiculous collection of decorative pillows from the living room, the ones that served no actual purpose except to be in the way when you wanted to sit on the couch. I packed her influencer vision board that was hanging in the spare bedroom. This giant poster covered in magazine cutouts of things she wanted to manifest or whatever. Pictures of tropical vacations and designer handbags and inspirational quotes in fancy fonts that said things like, "She believed she could, so she did," and "good vibes only." I even packed her collection of scented candles that she never lit because they were too pretty to burn, which defeats the entire purpose of a candle, but whatever. 20 boxes. I packed 20 neatly labeled boxes, and I didn't just throw stuff in randomly like some amateur. No, I labeled each box clearly. Clothes, bedroom, shoes, closet, bathroom stuff, kitchen items she never used, random decorative junk. I even color-coded them with different colored markers because if you're going to be petty, you might as well be organized about it. I stacked them all by the front door in a beautiful, perfect pyramid of packed belongings, like a monument to my newfound freedom. Then came the best part, the cherry on top of this beautiful sundae of justified pettiness. I changed the locks, called a 24-hour locksmith, paid him extra to come out at 2 in the morning, and had every single lock in the house changed. Front door, back door, side door, garage door, everything. New keys, new locks, new life. By 3 a.m., I was sitting on the couch with a bowl of popcorn, fresh batch, because the sandwich was long gone, and I'd worked up an appetite with all that packing. The action movie was still playing on Netflix, something with explosions and car chases that served as perfect background noise for the show I was really waiting for. I sat there in the dim light of the living room, surrounded by the boxes I'd so carefully packed, eating popcorn one kernel at a time, and I waited. I waited like someone waiting for the ball to drop on New Year's Eve, like a kid on Christmas morning, like anyone who knows something spectacular is about to happen and wants to savor every second of the anticipation. Around 3:15, I heard it. The rattling of the front door, the sound of a key being jammed into a lock that it no longer fit, the confused jiggling of the doorknob when it wouldn't turn. Then came the knocking, soft at first, then harder, then accompanied by confused whispering. The door rattled again, more insistent this time, and I heard Brooke's voice, slurred and sloppy, trying to whisper but definitely not succeeding. "Shoo, don't wake the neighbors," she hissed to whoever was with her, because of course she didn't come home alone. These were her options after all, and she probably wanted them to see inside the house, to show them what she had, to prove something to someone, maybe even to herself. Except, surprise, surprise, sweetheart, her stuff was already packed. 20 neatly labeled boxes stacked by the door like a beautiful wall of consequences. The locks changed, every single one of them. And me? I was sitting on that couch, eating popcorn that I'd buttered to perfection, waiting for her reaction like it was opening night at the movies and I had front row seats to the best show in town. The rattling continued, more desperate now, and I could hear her confusion turning into panic, could practically feel her realizing that something was very, very wrong. I took another handful of popcorn, settled deeper into the couch cushions, and smiled in the darkness. This was going to be good. Brooke's scream, when she finally processed what she was looking at, could have set off car alarms in the next county over. I'm talking a full-throated, primal shriek that probably made dogs howl and babies cry within a 3-block radius. She'd somehow gotten the door open just enough to see inside. I'd left the chain lock off because I wanted her to see, wanted her to fully absorb the beautiful tableau of packed boxes and changed locks. And the sound that came out of her mouth was something between a horror movie scream and a toddler's tantrum. "What the hell is this?" she shrieked, her voice cracking on the last word. Her hands pressed against the door like she was trying to push through sheer force of will and entitlement. I stood up from the couch, brushed the popcorn salt off my hands, and walked over to the door with the kind of calm that only comes from being completely, utterly done with someone's nonsense. I looked at her through the gap, taking in her smudged mascara, her disheveled hair that had lost its earlier party perfection, her heels dangling from one hand, because she'd clearly been walking around barefoot like some kind of discount Cinderella. Behind her, I could see Jim Bro and chest hair guy hovering awkwardly by her car, apparently smart enough not to approach, but dumb enough to still be there. I smiled at her, the kind of smile that's all teeth and no warmth, and said in my most helpful voice, "You're moving starter pack. Courtesy of me. Thought I'd help you explore those options faster. You know, since you have so many of them and all." "You can't do this," she yelled, and oh man, the entitlement in that statement was just chef's kiss. Like I couldn't make decisions about my own house, my own life, my own marriage that she'd just publicly declared didn't matter because she had options. Her face was turning red now, that splotchy kind of red that happens when someone's really losing it, when the anger is mixing with the alcohol and creating some kind of toxic emotional cocktail. "This is my house too. You can't just lock me out. This is illegal. I'll call the cops. I'll call a lawyer. I'll call." She was spiraling, cycling through threats like she was reading from a script titled "Things People Say When They've Messed Up But Don't Want to Admit It." I let her rant for a solid 30 seconds, just stood there watching the show, before I interrupted her. "Actually, Brooke, if you check the lease, which I know you never read because reading is hard when you're busy having options, you'll see that only my name is on it. This is legally my place. You're just someone who's been living here. Was living here. Past tense." The look on her face when that information sank in was priceless, like I'd just told her that all her social media accounts had been deleted or that leggings were no longer considered pants. She genuinely hadn't known, hadn't bothered to check, had just assumed that being married meant automatic access to everything without any of the responsibility. Then came phase 2 of the meltdown, the tears. Oh, the tears. They started slow, just a little shimmer in her eyes, then built up to a full waterworks display that would have made a soap opera actress proud. "I have nowhere to go," she wailed, drawing out that last word like she was singing it, her voice going up at least 2 octaves. "How can you be so cruel? What am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to sleep?" She was doing the thing where she talked between sobs, that hitching breath thing that's supposed to make you feel like a monster, supposed to trigger your protective instincts and make you cave. I laughed. I actually laughed, couldn't help myself, just let it out because the absurdity of the situation was too much. Here was a woman who, 3 hours ago, had told me she didn't need me because she had plenty of options, now acting like I was throwing her out onto the street with nothing but the clothes on her back instead of 20 neatly organized boxes of her belongings and a whole roster of dudes who'd apparently been waiting in the wings. "Oh no, Brooke," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm so thick you could spread it on toast. "The circus is in town. Guess what? You're the main act. The star attraction. Step right up and see the amazing disappearing wife who had so many options until she actually needed them. She tried everything in her arsenal after that, and I mean everything. She cycled through emotions like someone flipping through TV channels looking for something good to watch. Anger. You're going to regret this. You'll never find anyone better than me. I'm the best thing that ever happened to you. Sure, sweetie, that's why you left the party with 2 random dudes. Bargaining. Can we just talk about this? I didn't mean what I said. I was drunk. It was just a joke. Come on, babe, don't do this. Sorry, the babe discount expired when you told me you had options." Then came the really desperate move, the one I honestly should have seen coming, but somehow still managed to surprise me with its sheer audacity. Seduction. She actually tried the whole pout and unzip the dress thing. Did this move where she bit her lip and looked at me through her eyelashes and started slowly pulling down the zipper on the side of her dress, like we were in some kind of low-budget adult film. "Come on," she purred, or tried to purr, but it came out more like a cat coughing up a hairball. "You know you don't really want this. Let me in and we can work this out. I'll make it worth your while." She actually winked. With her mascara-streaked raccoon eyes and her messy hair and her 2 options standing awkwardly in the background, she winked at me like that was going to be the magic move that made me forget everything and let her back in. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my popcorn bowl, which I brought with me to the door because why not? Might as well snack while watching the show. I doubled over, one hand on my stomach, tears actually forming in my eyes from the laughter. And when I finally caught my breath enough to speak, I wheezed out, "Oh man, Brooke, that's good. That's really good. You should take that act on the road. Actually, you're going to have to take it on the road because you don't live here anymore." Her face transformed from attempted sexy to full-on fury in about half a second. She started pounding on the door again, her performance of seduction completely abandoned in favor of pure rage. "Open this door. Let me get my stuff. You psycho. You crazy person. This is kidnapping. You're holding my belongings hostage. That's theft. Your stuff is right there," I interrupted, pointing to the boxes stacked so nicely by the door. 20 boxes, all labeled, very organized. "You can take them whenever you want. You just can't come in. See the difference? I'm not keeping anything from you. I'm just keeping you out." Important distinction. I was really enjoying this now. Enjoying the way each logical statement I made just seemed to make her angrier. Like I was poking a bear, but the bear couldn't actually reach me through the bars of its cage. Finally, she pulled out her phone with shaking hands, mascara now running in full streams down her face, her careful party makeup completely destroyed. "Fine," she screamed. "Fine. I'll call someone who actually cares about me. Someone who'll help me. Someone who's not a complete psychopath." She pulled up her contacts, and I watched with increasing amusement as she scrolled through, her thumb moving faster and faster, looking for one of those options she'd been so confident about just hours earlier. She selected someone. I couldn't see who from my angle, and put the phone on speaker, I guess because she wanted me to hear this, wanted me to witness someone coming to her rescue, proving that she really did have options, and I was the one who was going to be sorry. The phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Then someone picked up, a male voice, groggy and confused. "Hello? Brooke? It's 3 in the morning, what?" She didn't let him finish, just launched into it. "Derek. Oh my God. Derek, I need your help. My husband is being crazy. He's locked me out of the house. He's throwing me out. I have nowhere to go. Can I please come crash at your place? Just for tonight? Please." Her voice was desperate now, all the anger replaced with pleading, with genuine panic, because I think it was starting to dawn on her that maybe, just maybe, those options weren't as solid as she'd thought. There was a pause on the other end, a long, uncomfortable pause that stretched out like taffy, and I could practically hear Derek trying to figure out how to get out of this. Then came the words that made my entire night, maybe my entire month. Brooke, I can't. My girlfriend's here. She wouldn't. I mean, it's not a good time. Maybe try." And she hung up before he could finish, her face somehow getting even redder, her hands shaking as she stared at her phone like it had just betrayed her. I bit the inside of my cheek to stop from laughing out loud. Channeling every ounce of self-control, I had to keep my face relatively neutral. Option number 1, denied. Rejected. Unavailable due to actual girlfriend. And judging by the look on Brooke's face as she frantically scrolled through her contacts again, she was starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, options and guys who will actually help you when you need something were 2 very different categories. After cycling through what must have been every male contact in her phone, and let me tell you, watching her frantically scroll and call while getting either no answer, straight to voicemail, or some variation of "sorry, can't help," was better than anything Netflix could have offered me that night. Brooke finally did what she probably should have done in the first place. She called her sister, Celia. Now, I actually liked Celia. She was the complete opposite of Brooke in almost every way that mattered. Where Brooke was impulsive and dramatic, Celia was thoughtful and level-headed. Where Brooke spent money like it was going out of style, Celia actually had a savings account and a retirement plan. Where Brooke treated relationships like they were disposable, Celia had been with the same guy for 7 years, and they actually seemed happy. Celia was basically what Brooke could have been if Brooke had ever stopped thinking the world revolved around her for more than 5 consecutive minutes. It was nearly 2 in the morning when Brooke made the call, her voice now hoarse from all the screaming and crying and failed attempts at manipulation. I heard her on the phone, and even through the door I could hear the desperation. "Celia, I need you. Please. I know it's late, but I really need you right now. It's an emergency. Please come." There was some back and forth that I couldn't quite make out, and then Brooke just started full-on sobbing again. Doing that thing where you can barely understand what someone's saying through the tears. Just come, please. I'll explain when you get here. I just need you, please. I went back to the couch, because honestly, standing at the door was getting old and my popcorn bowl was empty anyway. I could hear Brooke outside, could hear her talking to Jim Bro and chest hair guy, and then I heard a car start and drive away. The options were departing, abandoning ship, probably realizing that whatever they thought was going to happen tonight had taken a very different turn and they wanted no part of the drama that was unfolding. Smart guys, honestly. Dumb enough to try to flirt with a married woman at a party, but smart enough to know when to bail. Celia showed up about 45 minutes later, and I knew it was her because I heard Brooke's crying intensify and then heard Celia's voice, calm and tired, saying, Okay, I'm here, just calm down and tell me what happened. I looked out the window and saw Celia standing there in sweatpants and an oversized hoodie, her hair thrown up in a messy bun, no makeup, looking like someone who'd been woken up in the middle of the night by her disaster of a sister. Again, she looked tired. Not just physically tired, but that deep, soul-level tired that comes from dealing with the same person's self-inflicted drama over and over and over again. I opened the door, because at this point I was ready to have an actual conversation with someone who might be reasonable. Celia looked up at me, then looked at the wall of boxes behind me, then looked back at Brooke, who was now clutching her sister's arm like a life preserver. What did you do this time? Celia asked, and I want you to appreciate the wording there. Not what happened, not what's going on, but what did you do this time? This implied a pattern, a history, multiple previous incidents that had required Celia to show up in the middle of the night and deal with Brooke's consequences. He's throwing me out over nothing. Brooke whined, her voice hitting registers that probably only dogs could fully appreciate. He packed all my stuff and changed the locks and won't let me in, and I didn't even do anything wrong. He's being crazy. He's being abusive. She was really warming up to her victim narrative now. Probably had been rehearsing it in her head while waiting for Celia to arrive. Probably thought that if she just said the right words in the right order that Celia would immediately take her side and tell me what a terrible person I was. Celia held up one hand, cutting Brooke off mid-rant, and turned to look at me. Just looked at me for a long moment, and I could see her doing the mental calculations, trying to figure out what had really happened because she knew her sister well enough to know that nothing usually meant something that I'm going to minimize and lie about. I reached into my back pocket and pulled out the folded papers I'd put there earlier, back when I was packing boxes and planning and being extremely thorough about everything. It was a notarized notice I'd printed that afternoon. Yeah, that afternoon, because I'd had a feeling that party was going to go south and I wanted to be prepared, stating that Brooke had 30 days to collect her belongings and that she was no longer welcome to reside at the property. I handed it to Celia, who unfolded it and started reading, her eyes scanning the official language, the date, the notary seal at the bottom. While she read, I said, keeping my voice calm and reasonable, she told me she had options. At the party, in front of everyone, said she didn't need me. So I'm just helping her use those options. She's got all her stuff right here, neatly packed, clearly labeled. Nothing's damaged, nothing's missing. She can take it whenever she wants. She just can't live here anymore. Brooke opened her mouth to protest, but Celia held up that hand again, still reading the notice. When she finished, she looked up at me, then looked at Brooke and let out a sigh so deep, so profound, so filled with exhausted disappointment that I actually felt a little bad for her. Not for Brooke, mind you, but for Celia, who clearly had been dealing with this kind of thing for way too long. Not again, she muttered, and those two words carried the weight of years of similar incidents. Years of having to bail out her sister, years of watching Brooke make the same mistakes over and over while refusing to learn anything from them. What do you mean, not again? I asked, because suddenly I was very interested in what other stories existed in Brooke's history, what other times she'd pulled similar stunts, what other men had stood where I was standing and dealt with her nonsense. Celia looked at me with something that might have been sympathy mixed with a little bit of respect, like she was impressed I'd actually done something about it instead of just rolling over and taking it. This is her pattern, Celia said, her voice flat and tired. She did this with Trevor, her ex before you. Told him she had options, flirted with other guys, pushed him until he finally snapped, and kicked her out. And before Trevor, there was Marcus. Same thing. She gets comfortable, starts taking someone for granted, starts looking around for the next thing, and then acts surprised when they don't want to put up with it anymore. She looked at Brooke while saying this, and Brooke had the decency to look down at her feet, unable to meet her sister's eyes. That's when it really hit me. I wasn't the first sucker. I wasn't even the second sucker. I was apparently at least the third guy who'd fallen for Brooke's act, married her or dated her seriously, and then discovered that what she meant by relationship was really just someone to pay my bills and give me attention while I keep shopping around for something better. The difference was, I decided to be the last. The one who actually did something about it instead of just quietly accepting it and moving on. The one who packed her stuff, changed the locks, and served her consequences with a side of sarcasm and popcorn. Brooke, Celia said, turning to her sister with the kind of stern voice you usually hear from disappointed parents. You cannot keep doing this. You cannot keep treating people like they're disposable and then acting like you're the victim when they finally have enough. This is on you. This is your mess. And I'm not going to stand here and tell him he's wrong, because from what I can see, he's being more than fair. He packed your stuff. He's giving you time to get it. He's not keeping anything from you. You made your choices, now you deal with them. Brooke's face crumpled like a paper bag, fresh tears streaming down her already destroyed makeup. But I have nowhere to go, she whispered, and for the first time that night, she actually sounded genuinely scared rather than just performatively upset. All my options, nobody will. She couldn't even finish the sentence, couldn't admit out loud that all those options she'd been so confident about had evaporated the second she actually needed something from them. Celia sighed again, and I could see her resolve crumbling just a little bit, because that's what happens when it's family, even when that family member is a walking disaster who never learns. You can stay with me, she said, and Brooke's face immediately brightened like someone had just told her she'd won the lottery. For 1 week, Celia continued, holding up a finger for emphasis. 1 week, Brooke, and you're sleeping on the couch, and you're going to help with rent. And you're going to figure out your next move, because I'm not running a halfway house for people who make terrible decisions. This is temporary. Very temporary. Do you understand? Brooke nodded frantically, probably already planning how she was going to stretch that 1 week into 2, then 3, then indefinitely, because that's what people like Brooke do. They take the inch you give them and try to turn it into a mile. But I could see in Celia's eyes that she was wise to it, that she'd dealt with this before and wasn't going to let it happen again. She turned to me and said, I'll help her load the boxes into my car. I'm sorry you had to deal with this. You seem like a decent guy. You deserve better. Then she looked at Brooke with an expression that could freeze lava. And you need to figure out your life, because this cannot keep happening. As I watched them load box after box into Celia's car, Brooke sniffling and Celia working in determined silence, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. Pure, uncomplicated relief. The weight that had been sitting on my chest was lifting with every box that disappeared into that car. By the time they'd loaded the last one and Celia was pulling away with Brooke in the passenger seat, looking back at the house with a mixture of disbelief and regret, I was already back inside, locking the new lock and smiling to myself. The circus had left town, and I still had my popcorn. The next morning, I woke up feeling better than I had in literally years. Stretched out across the entire bed without someone hogging the covers. No alarm going off for someone else's schedule. Just pure, blissful silence and space. I made coffee, just 1 cup. For me, no second cup that would sit there getting cold while someone scrolled through their phone for 2 hours, and I actually sat down to drink it while it was still hot. Revolutionary concept. I made myself breakfast, eggs and bacon and toast. Didn't have to share. Didn't have to listen to complaints about how the bacon was too crispy or not crispy enough or how eggs in the morning were too heavy, even though she'd eat a breakfast burrito the size of a football if we went out. I was just existing peacefully in my own space, enjoying my own company, thinking about how I might spend my suddenly very free weekend, when my phone started going absolutely insane. I'm talking notification after notification, that rapid-fire buzzing that makes your phone dance across the counter like it's possessed. Text messages, Facebook Messenger, Instagram DMs, even a couple of emails, all coming in within the span of about 5 minutes. My first thought was that something terrible had happened, like a natural disaster or a celebrity death, or maybe World War III had started and everyone was saying their goodbyes. But then I started actually reading the messages, And oh boy, it was so much better and worse than I could have imagined. They were all variations on the same theme. Dude, what is Brooke posting about you? And have you seen Instagram? And is everything okay? And my personal favorite, from my buddy Marcus who has zero chill. Bro, your wife is having a full meltdown online, and it's wild. I opened Instagram with the kind of dread you feel when you know you're about to witness a train wreck, but you can't look away, and there it was. Brooke had gone full Broadway, full Oscar-worthy performance, full, I'm the victim here, production complete with carefully staged photos and captions that probably took her an hour to write. The first post was a black screen with white text, because apparently that's the universal signal for, I'm going through something serious and you should pay attention. The text read, when you realize the person you trusted most in the world is actually toxic and controlling. When you wake up to find your entire life packed in boxes like your trash. When you're left with nowhere to go because someone decided your feelings don't matter. Heartbroken doesn't even begin to cover it. And the comments, oh God, the comments. They were rolling in like a tidal wave of support from people who had absolutely zero context, zero information about what had actually happened, but were more than happy to jump on the poor Brooke bandwagon. You deserve so much better, and he never deserved you anyway. And what kind of monster does that to someone? And stay strong, queen. I scrolled through them, my coffee getting cold in my hand, watching person after person pile on without having any idea what they were actually supporting. It was like watching a mob form in real time, except instead of torches and pitchforks, they had heart emojis and crying faces. The second post was even better. It was a photo of Brooke, clearly taken that morning at Celia's place, looking strategically devastated. Minimal makeup to show how real and vulnerable she was being, hair in a messy bun that probably took 15 minutes to get looking perfectly messy, wearing an oversized hoodie that I'm pretty sure was mine that she'd apparently packed for herself, sitting on what looked like Celia's couch with her knees drawn up and the saddest expression she could muster. The caption was a masterpiece of manipulation. Sitting here trying to process how someone who said they loved me could be so cruel. He packed my things like I was trash, threw me out of my home, financially abusive, emotionally manipulative. I gave him everything, and this is what I get. But I'm strong. I'll survive this. To everyone going through something similar, you're not alone. We deserve better. She'd even added hashtags. Hashtags. Hashtag toxic relationships, hashtag survivor mode, hashtag know your worth, hashtag you deserve better, hashtag emotional abuse. I sat there staring at my phone, watching the likes climb higher and higher, watching more comments roll in, and I felt this weird mix of anger and amusement. Anger because she was literally lying to hundreds of people, twisting the narrative so far from reality that it was basically fiction at this point. But also amusement because this was so predictably Brooke, so perfectly on brand for someone who could never, ever accept responsibility for her own actions. It was always someone else's fault, always someone else being unreasonable, always her being the victim of circumstances that she'd actually created herself. The woman had told me to my face that she didn't need me and had plenty of options, had left a party with 2 other dudes, and was now acting like I'd done something to her, instead of simply responding to her choices with consequences. My favorite comment, though, the one that made me actually laugh out loud and almost spit coffee across my kitchen, came from someone named Jessica who apparently went to high school with Brooke. Didn't this same thing happen with Trevor? And Marcus before that? She wrote. And I could practically feel the record scratch, the music stopping, the entire narrative screeching to a halt. Other people started responding to Jessica's comment, some defending Brooke with everyone makes mistakes and people change, but others started chiming in with their own observations. Wait, yeah, I remember the Trevor thing, someone else wrote. Wasn't she posting about how terrible he was too? And then another person. She literally said the same stuff about Marcus. Like, word for word some of these captions are the same. I screenshot that entire comment thread, saved it to my phone like it was evidence in a court case, because it was beautiful. It was the internet doing what the internet does best, having receipts, remembering everything, and calling out patterns that people try to hide. The narrative Brooke was trying to build, this carefully constructed story of her being blindsided by a cruel husband, was already starting to crumble under the weight of her own history. People were starting to connect dots, starting to remember that this wasn't the first time Brooke had played the victim card, starting to question whether maybe, just maybe, there was another side to this story. But the posts kept coming. Over the course of the morning, Brooke posted 3 more times, each one more dramatic than the last. There was the post about starting over with nothing, which was rich considering she had 20 boxes of her stuff, most of which was expensive and barely used. There was the post about fake people who smile to your face then stab you in the back, which I assumed was about me even though I'd been pretty upfront about my feelings regarding her options comment. And then there was my absolute favorite, the one that made me realize Brooke had fully committed to this performance. A post about how she'd been financially supporting the household and now had nothing to show for it. I actually called my buddy Derek, different Derek than the one she'd called at 3 in the morning. This was my Derek, we'd been friends since college, and read him that caption. His response was immediate. Didn't you pay for literally everything? Yes, Derek, yes I did. I paid for everything. The rent, the utilities, the groceries, the streaming services, the internet, the car insurance, even her gym membership that she used maybe twice a month. Brooke's financial contribution to our household had been roughly equivalent to a decorative houseplant, except at least a houseplant produces oxygen and doesn't complain about the thermostat setting. You should respond, Derek said, and I could hear him getting excited about the drama, living vicariously through my disaster of a marriage dissolution. You should post your side. Show the receipts, bank statements, bills, everything. Blast her, and for a moment, I was tempted. I was so tempted to match her energy, to go full scorched earth, to post every single piece of evidence that would show everyone exactly who'd been supporting whom, who'd been patient and understanding, who'd packed things carefully in labeled boxes instead of just throwing them on the lawn like she probably would have done if the roles were reversed. But then I thought about it, really thought about it, and realized that's exactly what she wanted. She wanted me to engage, wanted me to fight back publicly, wanted to turn this into a full spectacle that she could then use as more evidence of me being toxic and crazy. She'd twist whatever I said, screenshot it out of context, add it to her narrative of victimhood. The more I said, the more ammunition I'd be giving her. So instead, I did something that I knew would drive her absolutely insane. I posted nothing. Not a single thing. No response, no defense, no explanation, nothing. Just radio silence from my end. But I did start getting messages from friends, real friends who actually knew both of us, who'd witnessed some of Brooke's behavior firsthand, who were asking if I was okay and if there was anything they could do. I responded to those privately, gave them the short version of what had happened, and almost universally got responses like, yeah, that tracks, and I kind of saw this coming, and honestly, good for you for finally doing something about it. Turned out a lot of people had opinions about Brooke that they'd been keeping to themselves because, you know, she was my wife, and you don't usually tell someone their spouse is kind of terrible unless specifically asked. One friend, Oliver, yeah, the birthday boy whose party had started this whole thing, sent me a message that I saved. Dude, I've been waiting for you to wake up for like a year. She was all over guys at every party, always complaining about you to anyone who'd listen, always acting like being married to you was some kind of burden. You're better off without her. Also, those boxes were impressively organized. Did you color code them? Yes, Oliver, I did color code them, because if you're going to petty, you might as well be thorough about it. By the afternoon, Brooke's posts were still getting engagement, still getting supportive comments from people who didn't know better, but I also started noticing that some mutual friends had stopped liking her posts, stopped commenting. A few had even unfollowed her, which in the social media world is basically the equivalent of publicly choosing sides. And in the group chats I was in, the ones without Brooke, people were sharing screenshots of her posts and dissecting them, pointing out the inconsistencies, remembering other times she'd done similar things, generally not buying what she was selling. The court of public opinion was slowly, gradually starting to shift, and I didn't have to do a single thing except sit back and let Brooke be Brooke. I thought I'd have at least a few days of peace, you know? A nice quiet weekend to decompress, watch some movies, maybe reorganize the closet now that it wasn't stuffed with 17 different versions of the same black dress and 40 pairs of shoes I'd constantly trip over. I should have known better. I should have known that Brooke wasn't the type to go quietly into the night, to accept defeat with any kind of grace or dignity, to just take her boxes from Celia's and move on with her life like a reasonable adult human being. No, that would have been too easy, Too mature, too much like acknowledging that actions have consequences, and she'd actually brought this on herself. So when I heard aggressive pounding on my door at 7 in the morning, 7 in the morning on a Sunday, which should be illegal or at least socially unacceptable, I knew immediately that Brooke had escalated things. I was still in bed, having enjoyed sleeping in for the first time in forever without someone's alarm going off at 6:30 because they needed an hour to do their makeup even though they weren't going anywhere. The pounding continued, getting louder and more insistent, accompanied by a voice that sounded like it had been marinated in energy drinks and bad decisions. Yo, open up. I know you're in there. Open this door right now. I pulled on sweatpants and a t-shirt, already annoyed but also kind of curious about what fresh hell Brooke had cooked up now. I looked through the peephole and saw a dude who looked exactly like what you'd get if you ordered intimidating muscle off Wish.com. He was big, sure, probably spent a lot of time at the gym based on the tight tank top that was working overtime to contain his arms, but he had this energy that was more trying really hard to seem tough than actually tough. He was pacing back and forth on my front porch, psyching himself up, probably rehearsing whatever lines Brooke had fed him about what a terrible person I was and how he needed to help this poor, defenseless woman get her belongings back from her evil husband. I didn't open the door. Instead, I called out through it, keeping my voice calm and reasonable. Can I help you with something? The pounding stopped, and I saw him lean toward the door, probably not expecting me to actually respond without opening it. Yeah, you can help me by opening this door. I'm here for Brooke's stuff. She sent me to get it. His voice had that aggressive edge that's supposed to make you scared, supposed to make you comply immediately out of fear, but mostly just made him sound like he was auditioning for a role in a low-budget action movie and wasn't getting a call back. Okay, I said, still through the closed door, still perfectly calm. Brooke's welcome to schedule an appointment to pick up her belongings. She has my number. She can call or text to arrange a time. Also, are you on the lease? I knew the answer to that question, obviously, but I wanted to hear him try to justify why he thought he had any right to be here demanding entry to someone else's property. There was a pause, and I could practically hear the gears in his head turning, trying to figure out if this was a trick question. What? No, I'm not on the lease. I'm just here to help Brooke get her stuff because you're being a... And then he used a word that I won't repeat, but let's just say it wasn't friendly. Right. So you're not on the lease, which means you have exactly zero legal right to be here demanding anything, I said, and I could tell by the way his face changed. I could see it through the peephole, watching him process this information, that nobody had explained to him how property law works. Brooke needs to contact me directly to arrange pickup. You need to leave my property. Have a nice day. I started to walk away from the door, heading back toward my bedroom because I figured that would be the end of it. He'd leave, probably call Brooke and tell her I wasn't cooperating, and that would be that. That's when I heard the kick. This absolute genius, this mastermind of decision-making, this scholar of consequences, decided that the appropriate response to being told to leave was to kick my door. Not just a little kick either, a full force, trying to break it down kick that actually made the frame shake. Then another kick. And another. He was really committed to this approach, really thought that property damage was the way to go here. I stood in my hallway, phone already in my hand, watching through the peephole as this dude tried to literally kick his way into my house, and I almost felt bad for him. Almost. Because he clearly had no idea what he'd just gotten himself into, clearly had no concept that actions have consequences, clearly thought he was the hero in this story, when really he was just the latest in a long line of Brooke's bad decisions. I called the cops, calmly explained that someone was attempting to break into my home, gave them my address, described the guy who was currently treating my front door like it owed him money. The dispatcher asked if I was in immediate danger, if I could get to a safe location, and I told her I was fine. The door was solid, and I was just waiting for officers to arrive. They're on their way, she said. Stay on the line with me. So I did. I stayed on the line, and I watched through the peephole as this guy kept kicking, kept pounding, kept yelling about how I needed to open the door and give him Brooke's stuff, or else he was going to make me regret it. Tough talk from someone who was about to have a very bad day. The cops showed up maybe 8 minutes later, which felt longer because I was listening to this dude destroy himself with every kick, but was actually pretty quick response time. I heard the sirens, saw the guy. I'd later learn his name was Kendall, because of course it was, freeze mid-kick, his face going from aggressive to oh no in record time. Two officers got out of their car, hands on their belts in that way cops do when they're ready for things to go sideways, and approached Kendall with the kind of professional authority that makes it very clear you're not in charge anymore. Sir, step away from the door. Put your hands where we can see them. I opened my door then, because I wanted to watch this, wanted to see how this played out, wanted to witness Kendall realize that maybe, just maybe, he should have asked a few more questions before agreeing to be Brooke's muscle for the day. The officers were asking him questions, taking down his information, and I explained the situation calmly and clearly. I didn't know this person, he wasn't on my lease, he'd been attempting to force entry into my home. I had video from my doorbell camera if they needed it. One of the officers went to check Kendall's information in their system, while the other one took my statement, examining the scuff marks and damage on my door frame where Kendall had been kicking it. That's when things got really interesting. The officer who'd been running Kendall's information came back with this look on his face, the look that cops get when they've just found something good, something that makes their day more exciting than writing traffic tickets and dealing with noise complaints. He walked up to Kendall and said, "Sir, you have active warrants. I'm going to need you to turn around and put your hands behind your back." The transformation on Kendall's face was absolutely beautiful, like watching someone realize they've made not just one mistake, but a whole cascade of mistakes that led them to this exact moment. Wait, what? No, I can explain. I was supposed to take care of those. I was going to. But the officer was already putting handcuffs on him, reading him his rights, and I was standing there in my doorway in sweatpants watching the whole thing unfold like it was performance art. Turned out Kendall had warrants for unpaid tickets, missed court dates, and some other stuff that the officer didn't share with me, but implied was not great. So not only had Kendall shown up to try to intimidate me and break into my house, he'd done it while actively wanted by the law, which is just impressively stupid. It's like robbing a bank while wearing a name tag. It's like running a red light directly in front of a police station. It's decision-making so bad it almost circles back around to being impressive. As they were loading Kendall into the police car, he was yelling about how this was all a misunderstanding, how he was just trying to help a friend, how he didn't know about the warrants even though you generally know when you skip court dates and ignore tickets. One of the officers came back to talk to me, asked if I wanted to press charges for the attempted break-in and the property damage. I looked at my door, looked at the police car where Kendall was sitting with his head down looking like he was rethinking all his life choices, and said, "Yeah, I think I do. Just to be thorough." The officer nodded, made some notes, gave me a case number, and told me I'd be contacted if they needed any additional information. After they left, after the cops had driven away with Kendall in custody and the neighborhood had gone back to its normal quiet Sunday morning routine, my phone rang. Brooke. Of course it was Brooke. I let it go to voicemail, listened to the message she left, and it was exactly what I expected. "You got Kendall arrested. How could you do that? He was just trying to help me. This is so typical of you. You can't just let me get my stuff. You have to make everything difficult. You have to ruin everything. This is harassment. This is..." The message cut off because she'd run out of time, and I deleted it immediately. She called back 3 more times, left 2 more voicemails that were variations on the same theme of me being terrible and this being somehow my fault. Finally, I texted her back, keeping it simple and to the point. "You sent someone to break into my house. That someone had active warrants. Kendall got Kendall arrested by being wanted by the police and then committing a crime. Maybe next time don't choose your bodyguards off Craigslist. Your stuff is still here. You can schedule a pickup time like a normal person." I didn't wait for her response, just muted the conversation and went back to my now interrupted Sunday morning. The best part came later that afternoon when Oliver texted me. "Dude, Brooke just posted on Instagram about how you weaponized the police against her friend who was just trying to help. The comments are not going her way." I checked, and sure enough, there was another post from Brooke, another carefully worded narrative about how I was escalating things, how I'd gotten an innocent person arrested, how this proved how vindictive and cruel I was. But the comments, oh, the comments were gold. "If he had warrants, that's on him," someone wrote. "Why are you sending people to your ex's house anyway?" Another person asked. "This is getting weird, Brooke," wrote someone else. Even some of her supporters were starting to quietly back away, realizing that maybe, just maybe, they'd backed the wrong horse in this race. I made myself lunch, a really good sandwich with actual fresh ingredients. and ate it while sitting on my couch in my peaceful, drama-free house, thinking about how Kendall was probably having a much worse day than I was, and how Brooke was probably scrambling to find her next move now that the send intimidating muscle plan had backfired so spectacularly. Saturday rolled around, the official pickup day we'd agreed on after 17 text exchanges that were about as pleasant as negotiating a hostage situation. Brooke was supposed to show up at noon. Naturally, she arrived at 1, because being on time would require respecting someone else's schedule, and we couldn't have that. I watched from my window as she pulled up in a truck that looked like it was compensating for something, the kind with oversized wheels and an engine that announced its presence 3 blocks away. She wasn't alone either. She'd brought reinforcements. Her mom, 3 new guys I'd never seen before, and an energy that screamed, "We're here to make this as dramatic as possible." Her mom was the first one up the driveway, marching toward my door like a general leading troops into battle, and before I could even say hello, she launched into it. "Where's my mother's necklace? The family heirloom? What did you do with it?" I almost laughed. In the weeks that followed the great box pickup drama, I got to watch Brooke's carefully constructed empire of options crumble like a stale cookie someone left out overnight. And I didn't have to do anything except sit back and occasionally check social media, because Brooke was documenting her downfall in real time like it was a reality show nobody asked for, but everyone was watching anyway. First to fall was Derek, Jim Bro himself, the guy whose jokes about muscle confusion had been so hilarious at Oliver's party. Turns out his girlfriend, the one who'd been at his place when Brooke called at 3 in the morning, wasn't thrilled about some random married woman trying to crash at their apartment. Shocking, I know. According to the group chat intel I was getting from mutual friends, Derek's girlfriend had given him an ultimatum: Brooke goes, or I go. Derek, displaying more common sense than I'd given him credit for, chose his actual girlfriend over Brooke's drama. Brooke lasted exactly 4 days on his couch before getting kicked out, and she posted about it too. Some vague thing about fake friends who abandon you when you need them most. Next up was Antonio, one of the new guys from Pickup Day, chest hair cologne model's buddy apparently. He'd offered to let Brooke stay at his place, probably thinking he was going to be the hero who swooped in and won her heart or whatever fantasy he'd cooked up. That lasted maybe a week before he ghosted her completely. Just stopped responding to texts, blocked her number, the whole 9 yards. I heard through the grapevine. And by grapevine, I mean Oliver, who was absolutely living for this drama, that Brooke had expected Antonio to basically support her financially while she got back on her feet, which in Brooke speak meant while she did absolutely nothing and expected someone else to pay her bills. Antonio, to his credit, figured out pretty quickly that damsel in distress was Brooke's full-time career and noped out of that situation. Rex was another option that bit the dust. He'd been part of her rotation, one of those guys who was always commenting on her Instagram posts with fire emojis and gorgeous comments. When she actually needed something from him, though, blocked. Just straight up blocked her on everything. Didn't even give her an explanation, just vanished like he'd entered witness protection. Lamar, option number whatever at this point, actually had the decency to tell her directly, "You're too much drama, Brooke. I can't deal with this." She'd posted screenshots of that conversation, trying to make him look like the bad guy, but the comments were mostly people agreeing with Lamar. "He's not wrong," someone wrote. "Maybe take the hint," wrote another. Even Celia got tired of Brooke's antics when she discovered her sister had tried to use her credit card without permission to buy concert tickets. Concert tickets. While supposedly broke and homeless and struggling, Brooke was trying to buy concert tickets on someone else's dime. Celia kicked her out too, changing her locks just like I had, coming full circle in the most poetic way possible. On Instagram, Brooke tried to rebrand her situation as choosing the free-spirited nomad lifestyle, posting aesthetic photos of different couches she was crashing on with captions about freedom and finding yourself. The comments were brutal though. One guy wrote, "Sis, you're not a nomad. You're just homeless." Another person commented, "This is sad. Get your life together." Even the people who'd initially supported her were starting to see through the performance. Watching it all unfold was better than any TV show. 3 weeks after the Great Box Exodus, after the parade of failed options, after the social media meltdown had quieted down and people had moved on to fresher drama, my doorbell rang at 3 in the morning. I was awake, actually, Couldn't sleep and was watching some documentary about deep-sea creatures when I heard it. I checked my phone first, saw the notification from my doorbell camera, and there she was, Brooke, looking like she'd been through a war and lost every battle. Mascara streaked down her face in dark rivers, hair that hadn't seen a brush in days, wearing clothes that looked slept in. She had a duffel bag in one hand and was holding her phone in the other, crying directly into the camera. "I don't have options," she sobbed, her voice cracking with desperation that sounded real for once, not performed. "Please, just tonight. Just one night. I'll sleep on the floor, I don't care. Please." I was wrong, okay? I was so wrong. I messed up everything. Please just let me in. I have nowhere else to go. All my options are gone. Please. She kept repeating it, kept begging, kept standing there waiting for me to answer the door, to be her safety net one more time, to rescue her from consequences she'd created for herself. I sat on my couch in the dark, tea getting cold in my hand, watching her on my phone screen. Watched her ring the doorbell again. Watched her cry harder. Watched her finally sink down onto my porch steps, head in her hands, shoulders shaking. And I felt nothing. No guilt, no sympathy, no urge to help. Just a calm, peaceful nothing. She'd made her choices. She'd told me she had options. She'd treated me like I was replaceable, like our marriage was disposable, like I'd always be there to catch her no matter what she did. Well, funny thing, Brooke. I've got options too. Silence. Netflix. A full fridge. A clean apartment. A life without drama. And a locked door that's staying locked. When she finally left 30 minutes later, dragging her duffel bag behind her, I laughed. Actually laughed, harder than I had in months. My apartment was clean, my bank account was healthier, and my peace? Absolutely priceless.